Hey, this is Molly Rennick from Living Dead Girl.
I'm Jeremy Saffer, rock photographer.
Hey, this is Baz Black.
Hey guys, this is John Karabi.
Hey there, this is Ron Wasserman, the nut that wrote Go-Go Power Rangers.
Hi everyone, I'm Kevin Mahon. I'm a podcaster and you're listening to the Chronicles of Podcast with Jamie and Tom.
Hey guys, what's going on? Welcome back to the 71st edition of the Chronicles of Podcast. See, Jamie's allowed, like, come on down, come have a seat, pull up a pew. We're not in a church. Jamie, I do believe that these right about here are the Chronicles of Kefin Mahon.
Yeah, they are.
Ooh, I'm excited. Boom. Beautiful. Absolutely wonderful. Let's get started. Hit it! But Jamie, I think we should get down to that piece of resistance that everyone comes here for, the cruxy, deliciousy part of the show.
Oh, I think we definitely should.
Welcome to the Chronicles of Kefin Mahon.
This is fantastic. Kefin, I have followed for 9 years. I worked this out earlier today. He's a podcaster who has inspired me. He's incredible. He hosts the Attitude Era podcast, How to Wrestling, Cinema Swirl, with his co-host Sam Chaplin, we've previously had on the show. You guys, this guy is inspirational to me. You guys are going to love this one. Let's get to it.
It's going to be a bloody doozy. Kefin, thank you so much for, like I said earlier, for taking the time out to sit and chat to us after we've had a bit of a fuck up. So massively appreciate you scheduling us in. We really do appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, interviewing this week, it's Kefin Mahon.
Hello, sir.
How you doing, fella?
Oh, look at that. The backgrounds and everything. You know, me, office neutral. Hang on there now. Even better. Here we go. No backlights. Straight raw video. Here we go.
Well, you have
That's what we love.
Your biggest fan behind you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, literally right behind you.
That was poor, James. That was so poor. I'm so sorry for him, Kefin. All right, I do apologise. This might be about
one. There's always one. There's always the difficult podcast co-host. There's always the one, isn't there?
This is I just want to clarify, because we've already pre-recorded our actual show with you with your interview and etc. And your surname. So I've heard it so many times said different ways. I just want to clarify what it actually is.
Go on, have a go then, he said to the Englishman as he...
I pronounced it Mahon.
Oh, no, Jesus, no.
Shit. Okay.
Don't worry. But don't worry. You know what? No one seems to be able to get a decent grasp of it. So you can apologize in the end.
Yeah, perfect. I heard I watched one of your YouTube videos earlier, and a guy called you, is it Mahon or something? I was like,
well, that's slightly closer. The one which I hate is I get Mahon sometimes. I'm like, you can drop it in extra O's. No, thank you.
Mahon?
No, thank you. I know. Not even remotely similar.
Sound like an African instrument.
I know, yeah.
Such a weird...
Or when I lived in Scotland for a year, and I used to always get McMahon, because people just figured, like, oh, it sounds good, doesn't it? Kevin McMahon. I was like, oh, all right, like, I'll take it.
There's no way you want to be associated with that anymore, anyway.
No, I think that was the heady days of 2010 when we just reckoned it would happen, you know.
But Kefin, thank you so much for doing this. We really appreciate it on such short notice.
A pleasure to be on here, so.
Wonderful. All that really happens is Jamie does like a little introduction. It lures you in to a false sense of security, actually, but with his little introduction. And then we're just going to absolutely bombard the living fuck out of your questions. How does that sound?
Sounds very good. Do you need me to record any audio here? Have you got it all sorted on your end?
All sorted, our end, my friend.
All good.
Bro, love it. Excellent.
Wonderful. Let's get this intro out of the way. Ladies and gentlemen, today we bring you another fantastic guest who has dedicated his life to podcasting and talking about the things he loves: wrestling, movies, and Gordon Ramsay. You may know this man's name from when we spoke to his Cinema Swirl co-host, Sam Chaplin. On a personal note, there are two people who inspired me to podcast. One is named Kevin Smith, and the other name is Kefin. Everyone join me as we welcome the cowboy himself, because these are the Chronicles of Kefin Mahon.
Hello, hi.
Hello. Thank you for coming on, sir.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I heard nothing but good things from Sam Chaplin, so this is either an elaborate trap on his behalf, or I'm in for a very good time.
Bit from column B.
It's graciously appreciated more than anything else. I'm sure this is going to be absolutely beautiful. Kevin, just first and foremost, how was your Christmas and New Year?
Oh, I had a blooming cracking Christmas and New Year. I had a great old time. My first Christmas as a happily married man, and I made a leg of lamb to celebrate, and I had a grand old time. And New Year's as well for the first time in like ages. I wasn't hosting New Year's, so I went to someone else's house. I ate loads of shit. I didn't clean up after myself. It was fat, and then I left. It was great.
I didn't feel bad.
Yeah, no, 6 years it's been building up.
Oh, mate. So much pent-up anger and frustration. It's like, I have to go somewhere else. I have to this year. Secondly, I think is one of the most important questions of all. I know it's not really a thing anymore. Well, it kind of isn't. But your pandemic season, like, how did you survive through that? How did you get through it?
Oh man, that was a strange old time because, like, in many ways, I think I was one of the most fortunate people in the world in that I was able to pretty much keep on trucking and keep doing what I was doing. A couple of very strange to begin with changes, with everything going to an online kind of recording setup, having to change everything really. But other than it's weird saying other than having to change everything, it was pretty much the same. But it was that type of a situation. It made me kind of, I don't know. If you told me ahead of time what was coming, I don't think I would have been able to go get through it. And I think I found myself very fortunate to have gotten through. You know, I know it's still ongoing in many respects and all that, but I think the nature of my job means I have to talk to a lot of people who I like quite a lot. And that helped an awful lot because as someone who doesn't like a social Zoom call, having a lot of, you know, lengthy podcast recordings that became pretty much social Zoom calls, it helped me out an awful lot, like, you know. So I think I ended up being a lot more in touch than I would have been had I had a different job, let's just say. So it was a challenging time all round, you know. But it was something I think I grew from, and a lot of people I knew grew from as well. So, you know.
It affected a lot of people in very different ways. But one thing I love about doing this show is the amount of people that have told us that they came out of the other side with a real positive, like, change in life or a change in outlook and everything. It's great to see.
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm someone who, you know, I'm not a social butterfly by any stretch of the imagination, and you know, I'm the type of person where if I've got 2 or 3 things on in a month, like, that's fine, I'm done. And I just look back in the last year and I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, talk about making up for lost time. Like, I feel like I got this kind of renewed appreciation, like sitting in a Pizza Express in late 2021 being like, you know, I can't believe where I am. Isn't this amazing? There's one, I swear to God, like, literally when they first, because in Manchester where I was, we were in lockdown for literally 15 months straight. We never came out. When we were in the tier system, we were always in the high security tier. And I remember being like, look at this. It's a Costa coffee. Isn't that amazing? Like, you know, just getting all emotional and finally leaving the fucking house, you know?
It's so crazy because obviously when it first started, everyone was like, summer, woo, we can go on pad, like, just go to the gardens and the parks, etc. But obviously once the weather got colder and it got darker, I think it affected a lot of people quite negatively. So I understand going to Costa, Starbucks, just even going outside and breathing fresh air was wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, we were having our kitchen done up, literally, like, the papers are signed, sealed, and delivered, and we're going to get our kitchen done up, and it's February 28th, 2020, and literally, you know, we were in lockdown a couple of weeks later, and it basically, what should have taken a week took a month, and I basically spent a month barbecuing, and I was lucky that we had, I mean, the following March, it was snowing. That March, it happened to be like a blistering heat wave, and we were just outside the whole goddamn time barbecuing and reading manga in the sun. So I look back on that time period very fondly. But yeah, I think even with pandemics, you tend to look back on the nice bits, not the shit bits, you know?
That's the way to do it, really. But take us back, sir. Take us to when you were a young wee lad growing up in Ireland. What did young Master Kevin want to be when he was growing up?
Oh God. I mean, I wanted to be the very best, but I mean,
Like no one
I
ever
don't
was.
know. I mean, I had these strong notions when I was a child of like, I wanted to do something kind of funny. I liked drawing cartoons, even though I couldn't draw. I liked, making videotapes I like making, recording my own little radio shows with all my soft toys. I was doing that from like 6 years old. There's a immaculate rare Mahon family heirloom that is a recording of Freddie the Frog's Blue tape, which is me learning for the first time that Dad's hi-fi can do recording on it. And you can literally hear my parents in the background being like, he's not fucking doing this again. Like, they're just already like a 6-year-old recording. They're like, ah! And I interviewed all the Beatles with Freddie Frog, and I was so psyched up. So that was kind of, I guess, the earliest, podcasting kind of inclination I had, but we didn't have a name for it back then. And I went to a Catholic all boys boarding school where I think it was pretty much assumed that you weren't going to pursue anything artistic or in the media or anything like that. And I kind of feel like if I'd been in any other school, I probably would have been like, here, you should probably do something with that big voice of yours, as opposed to being like, my guidance counselor was like, well, you did your aptitude test and you should either be a scientist or an actor. And I was like, well, what do the guidance counselor, think I should do? And he goes, well, Kevin, I know people who are actors and they all work in pubs. So that was kind of, all right, I'll do science then, I guess. And I was watching CSI on television at the time. So I thought, I'll do science. It sounded to be like a good time. I don't think I really realized that, like, I mean, I guess it's kind of naive and you kind of fall in love with the subject. And I fell in love with biology and zoology in particular. And there wasn't a moment, and this is how blessed my kind of Celtic Tiger upbringing was that I don't think there was a single point when I was pursuing kind of a degree and then a postgraduate degree and then trying to get a PhD in zoology that anyone thought, you reckon you'll get a job with this at the end, And my schooling kind of segued into the financial crash in 2008, where it went from being like, do you want to look at centipedes to like, your zoological project better solve all of our problems or you're not getting funding. And I just kind of, in Ireland, we didn't have to pay for university. We got to go to university for essentially free. Like, we had to pay pumped up admin fees, but, I wasn't paying £9,000 to go to university when I did. So there was kind of a great purity of the academic pursuit. So that was kind of, I was really focused on that for a while. There was, even 10 years ago, if you told me, oh, you're going to be doing, podcasts and stuff like that, I'd be like, no, definitely not. It'll be this thing that I've poured all this kind of time and thought into, and a lot of academics and stuff in my family. So I think I maybe had a bit of a skewing towards thinking that's what I should do, as opposed to actually taking a moment to think, what would I actually like to do? And it turns out I like doing this a lot more than the other stuff I was doing.
Did you not have a plan then of what you wanted to do with all this zoology stuff?
I mean, had this great idea in my head of like, oh man, I'd see some of these old school lecturers and they'd be like, they just get to go and do kind of whatever intrigues them. They get to, do a few lectures here and there. I love the idea of teaching. I love teaching. And I think getting involved, the further down the rabbit hole I went when I was in, proper PhD, publishing works and having to run experiments and write theses and justify my existence every other week. It just got really too stressful in many respects. And it became very apparent that I was chasing kind of a dream that didn't really exist anymore, because maybe if I was born 10 years earlier, I could have segued into something like that. But the reality was there wasn't really many opportunities that I felt would like there were people who I would meet who were in their late 30s and early 40s, and they were brilliant scientists, like a million times better than I could ever hope to be. And they'd be like, it's a lonely road. I'm here in Lincoln now, but last year I was in Birmingham. Before that I was in St. Albans. Then I was in, Dubai. And it's like, I don't know if I want to be the globe-trotting academic trying to go wherever the work is. I just kind of want to settle down somewhere. And that was a big part of it, I guess. As you grow up, you kind of find out what your priorities were. And I got a little disillusioned with academia, if I'm being perfectly honest. It wasn't the noble pursuit that I originally thought that it was,
Mm. It's crazy. Sorry.
That's all right. I was going to say, I think I don't understand how schools and unis and stuff go, what do you want to do when you're older? You're 16 now, you're 18 now, you need to know what you know. Like, I'm 35, I haven't got a fucking clue still. This would be great, but other than that, I'm just, sifting on through. I mean, I work in events at the moment, but it's nuts, isn't it, really?
Yeah, because it's kind of like, what do you want to do? And then you're thinking like, well, what am I good at versus what should I do? And those, hopefully you're someone that overlaps, and that's really, really good, and it all works out for you. But I'm very, very glad that I went down the route that I did, even though I didn't come out the other side of it in the position that I thought I would have been at the start, because I wouldn't, I know it sounds cliche or whatever, but I wouldn't be who I am. And even those parts of me that, I've maybe reached the end of where I was going to go in that career, that's still a big part of me and who I am and all that. So I kind of, I carry a bit of that with me everywhere. So yeah, I think I never really felt, other than when I left the kind of the PhD thing that I was doing, I never really felt like disillusioned necessarily with what I was doing. It just kind of felt like I was going further and further down and putting more and more time in. And it's like, well, you kind of hope these things just kind of work themselves out. It was getting to a point where it's like, I can't just keep assuming that I'll just plow into something and it'll work itself out. I kind of need to take the bull by the horns and kind of make some choices for myself. And yeah, you get kind of you get bombarded, as you said, when you're young about all the choices you need to make and make them super quick. And it's funny when you actually get a bit of breathing room, you actually get to go, okay, hang on a second now. I've done that for a bit. What do I actually want to do? And think about it as someone who's at least approaching a semblance of an adult, as opposed to someone who's still can't get 120 stars in Mario 64 when I was 18 and rubbish.
So before we start talking about your podcasting career, I did want to mention your career in stand-up, because we did talk to Sam about this, because obviously he said it was where you guys met. What made you want to dabble in the world of stand-up?
I love making people laugh. I do. Like, I absolutely do. If I'll go to any kind of occasion, any sort of a room full of people, if I feel there's a chance I can make them laugh, I'll be very, very happy. And I know it's a very lizard brain Neanderthal way to look at the world, but it does give me a lot of joy. And there is nothing quite the same as the rush of doing stand-up successfully. It's a heady old brew that I could tell you some of like the highest moments of adrenaline in my entire life have been after doing stand-up and it going even remotely well. And like, there's times where I did it and like I watch back and I go, well, that was all right. I think I was just feeling confident at the end, but it was kind of the rush. And I really very first dipped my toe into stand-up when I was in university in Galway back in Ireland. And, I had like one or two gigs where some friends showed up and a gig where it was just me, and they all went kind of all right. It was rooms full of, the smallest was 20, the biggest was like 80 people. And I thought, this is great. I entered a talent show and I stormed it and I got all the way to the final. And of course, all the prelims were all in like, these small rooms, and the final was in this big ballroom, 5,000 people. And everyone there is doing, they're doing kind of singer-songwriter covers, and I'm the one stand-up lad. So everyone's there enjoying this really chill indie evening of somber toned dulcet musicians doing songs about mermaids or whatever, and then I walk on with my routine about wanking and Tetris, and it was like, and it was to silence. It was one of the worst fucking things ever. And they had like the Simon Cowell style judge up there, and he's like, well, I've seen you around university and you look very funny. Oh, but you're not actually funny though. And I was like, oh Jesus. And I was 19. Holy fucking hell. That was a harsh blow. So when I moved to the UK and I moved to Lincoln, when I first met Sam, your typical, he's emigrated and he's had a bit of a breakup, and I was feeling sorry for myself. And I just wanted to rip off the Band-Aid and just go do something that I know would take a lot of my headspace. And I thought, stand-up, easy. There's a stand-up society here in this university that I'm going to. I'll go there. Literally my first day I could go, I went there. And even though I hadn't done it in ages, because I'd been doing community radio and stuff like that for so long, I was talking shite nonstop for the last 5 years. So I thought I might as well do it in front of an audience. So yeah, that was a serious life raft. I'm very thankful for stand-up. I wouldn't recommend it to everyone, but if you really want to do something that's high risk, high reward. You don't get much more high risk, high reward than the old stand up, you know.
It sounds like that judge may as well just come up and just stabbed you straight in the heart. Yeah, right. Do you know what I mean? Rather than
it was bad. It was so bad. But I was like, I'm very glad that I had that happen though, because you know I've seen a lot of folks get a lot of praise at a young age, and it kind of really get to them, and then just they kind of run away with it, and then when they get something down the line that, you know, hey, that was an embarrassing and bad moment for me, but Jesus, you know, it prepped me for lots of other things later that, you know, when I did a gig and it didn't go well, I was like, you know, wasn't as bad as that one time.
Yeah.
And I think it was good because, you know, I needed to do something else in university at the time. It led me into doing other things, and I didn't dwell on it too much. And I think that, you know, stand-up is something that I'd always happily come back to. I felt if I needed a shot in the arm and to challenge myself, you know, I think stand-up would be where I would do that again.
Look at that. Would you ever do it again? Because like £1 trousers is absolutely fucking brilliant. So
yeah, it's the only proper joke I've ever written in my life. You know, I had someone send me a message once, and they were like, "God, you've got it sussed out in terms of stand-up because you've just found the audience that gets your jokes, and you get to tell them with you know your friends who will help you tell those jokes, and you get to edit them as well, so you can cut out all the bits that are shite after you've done the funny bits." So that's been a great boon. I feel like the more podcasting I've done, and I like to think most of the podcasts have got a humorous slant, I feel my itch is being scratched all the time. That, you know, I kind of feel like I'm laughing and other people who I record with are laughing a lot of the time. So I get that kind of lizard brain kind of satiated a little bit. I hear the ha-has, so I'm okay.
So obviously most of your career has revolved around one thing, and that is the glorious sport of professional wrestling. Where did this love and passion for wrestling come from?
Being 10 years old or 9 years old. No, 10 years I would have been just about. And my brother had been sent off to the school where I would be going in a few years, and he came back with a friend from Dublin one weekend. And the thing that we had seen once or twice on ITV back in the early 90s and made fun of ridiculously was suddenly, like Warhammer 40k, something to be taken very seriously, and we don't make fun of that now because it's one of your brother's interests. So all of a sudden, this thing which, and like I remember at the start being like, this, the thing with the Ultimate Warrior and the Undertaker that we like really didn't like. We're watching this. And like literally within 15 minutes, I was like, oh my God, Shane McMahon, can you believe that he's going to betray his father and be the referee at Survivor Series? He doesn't want that to happen. So I was just, you know, it was the absolute perfect mix of being something a little bit naughty that I knew I probably shouldn't have been watching. Same kick I got out of that, I got out of South Park. It was, you know, something that I had my kind of compulsory year pretending to like football that every boy is expected to have in Western Europe. But I'd never really had any sort of kind of sports or, you know, physicality or anything like that. And it really, you know, it really spoke to me. I loved seeing all the crazy moves. The Mankind spoke to me immediately. I thought, oh my God, a character who's not like most other characters. Holy shit. And I just found myself watching this show every week. I used to get so excited for Friday nights because there would be, you know, the comedy on BBC Two. You get Bottom and Rabsy Nesbitt and all that gold, and you get a bit of Shooting Stars, and then you swap over to Sky, and the laughs would continue on Monday Night Raw. Like, I think the fact that it was funny was so important. If it wasn't funny, I don't think I would have become a wrestling fan. You know, I think wrestling makes me laugh to this day in a way that nothing else can. And I love comedy of all shapes and sizes, but when wrestling is funny and it hits that sweet self-aware spot, my God, nothing. I watched the Royal Rumble 2007 the other night. I literally pulled a muscle. I was laughing so hard at the Great Khali slowly clearing the ring of 10 unwilling participants all being like, oops, this has been thrown. Oh my God, so funny. Oh my, Vince McMahon taking a stunner at WrestleMania this year, then having to resign in disgrace. So funny.
Oh my day! I mean, I remember being introduced to it. I think The Rock was on. I think it was like Road Dogg versus Mankind or something weird in like before SummerSlam '98. And all I remember, because my uncles used to watch it, and all I remember was The Rock and commentary going, "Excuse The Rock 1 second." And he just goes and twats Mankind and comes back and starts talking again. And that was just like, I was in then. I was in.
It was cool, you know. I say that in in the way that someone from the 50s would describe something in the 80s as being wizard. You know, it is. It just had that, like, and I don't feel like a lot of the shows I was watching at the time, I was someone where it's like, that's not animated, I'm not going to watch it. I loved cartoons so much, I rejected the non-animated world for a lot of my childhood. So this thing where suddenly it's like, hey, there's a guy and he's fucking cool, like, you know, or like there's a guy and he's a badass. You know, I loved Schwarzenegger movies and things like that, so it really, really spoke to me. You know, I don't think I could have articulated it as such at the time, but I'll tell you, a big part of it as well was video games, because not long after wrestling came into my life, it was, you know, the N64 was brought over by the same friend for one weekend, and when mum and dad saw how quiet we were, we got an N64 the following Christmas with WrestleMania 2000 and Attitude.
Yes.
Like, man, you want to talk about the folks who are running digital media companies these days, they could only dream of the synergy of, like, there's a show on and you watch it once a week and it's great, and there's a video game and you got to play it and the people are on it. Yes, that's all we needed.
Plus, Attitude Era, you could play as Head as a playable character. Yes. That always blew my mind.
Fantastic, you know. And I felt like it was one of those things, like, as an early age, like, because I became like I got the knowledge from my brother and his friend, who got the knowledge from the friend's older brothers. So there's kind of like this trickle down knowledge of like the old era of wrestling in ECW and Japan and FMW, and it would come towards me, and then I'd be telling my friend one weekend, like, do you know Cactus Jack is the king of the death match? I can't tell you anymore. I'm sorry. I literally can't tell you.
Like, it's this big secret.
Yeah, exactly. Shh, don't tell anyone. There's this wrestler called Sabu. Sometimes he bleeds.
No, Kane had his face burnt by his brother.
And it was for real as well. Like, it was...
but shit like that we should love as a kid, because I'd be like, no way, that's unbelievable. How was he doing that with, you know, it's never going to show his face ever again. And that's actually his brother.
Same reason why, like, Pokemon was king of the playground as well. It's like the economy of gossip and information, you know. Boys love to gossip just as much as girls, and like, you have all the boys around, like, who's the boy who gets to watch wrestling in his house and his parents let him? Who's the boy who's got the descrambled skybox so they can watch the pay-per-views? You know, you'd get all these like bits, and, you know, you'd have to, you know, right? It's, you know, I remember the Monday morning after a pay-per-view when I was in boarding school, who managed to stay up till 4 in the fucking morning in an old house full of priests and teachers and managed to watch a high octane wrestling event and no one found out. My God, and that's a big part of it as well, because like I was like putting my life on the line every time I watched wrestling. It felt like WrestleMania 17, there was a 10% chance of me thought I was going to be expelled every second I was watching it, and I couldn't look away.
The greatest WrestleMania of all time, that is. Will always forever be. Like, yeah, just the video package of Austin and The Rock before their match, even just that as alone is standout. Stellar. But I was watching your review of TNA. I think it was for the 20th anniversary, and you mentioned at the beginning that you were a WWE baby. So, like, if WCW was there, I'm not watching that. I'm not watching anything else. It's just this. I literally resonate with that, because I was exactly the same. I think I only started watching AEW like last year. I mean,
so, I've felt very blessed, because like when I was like 22 or 23, whenever it was, and it's like, well, I'll watch this WCW, then I guess we'll see what it's all the rage is about, you know. My God, like I remember me and my friend were like, we'll watch Nitro once a week, and we'll kind of see where we go with it, to see what it's all about, and we got hooked in hard. The build up to Starrcade '97, oh my God, the drama. NWO music on a loop constantly. Like I think there's a lot of people are like kind of, oh, how sad he grew up a tribal WWE fan. Like, don't cry for me, because I discovered this whole world of wrestling, like, amazing. Whoa, this is this whole other company that I wasn't paying attention to. And then 10 years after that, I got to like see it not told from the other company's perspective. I'm like, whoa, it's even better.
I do love it when the WWE just rewrites history.
Oh yeah, that's why we started the Attitude Era podcast. We were playing WWE 13, and the Attitude Era mode on it was so egregious, and we kept stopping every 2 seconds, me and Adam, to tell Billy like, "No, it wasn't like that, right? Yeah, what it was like actually was this." And we're like, "Whoa, this is so engaging. We should turn it into content."
Well, you just smashed my next question completely out of the park. Eh? But
well,
no.
if that's how the Attitude Era podcast came to be, it was literally, I was a few years in Lincoln at that point, maybe 2 years, and I think my extracurricular activities, including doing radio and stand-up comedy and running the stand-up comedy society with Billy and helping Adam Bibilo with literally you do media, you need to do anything. Yeah, I'll help. I was surrounded by people who were always doing these projects that were more interesting than the thing that I was slowly leaving essentially. And we did a radio show on the campus, the alternative campus radio, which was called Brayford Radio. And we were like 3 episodes into Radio Cart 64 when I think every time that we broadcast, either they literally forgot to turn on the aerial or like they didn't record our show. And like we had, had these rooms full of like boys playing radio essentially, like all sat in the big studio on their phones and all that. And like there's 6 of you in here and no one could check if we're actually broadcasting. And I came from back in Galway, I did 4 years of campus radio with Flirt FM. They taught me everything I know about hosting, editing, everything I kind of owe in terms of that could be taught to me about audio was taught to me there. And I remember being so disillusioned that the lads I knew we'd have such a good time if we could do our show properly, because I knew we had great chemistry. We had each other in stitches all the time. And I remember just literally leaving there one day after one show. We thought it was really great and it didn't get broadcast and it didn't get recorded. And I was literally like, fuck it, we're doing a wrestling podcast. That's it, And just the idea was naturally in my lap because we had been playing that game so much. I'd seen a lot of the kind of the chronology of reviewing of stuff that had been done by Place to Be, OSW and stuff, and I felt like I think I could do that, not necessarily better, but I know I can do it different. And that was the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to do something that was different. I wanted to approach it not as a typical wrestling fan, because I knew that Adam and Billy and myself were all very different in terms of our wrestling fandom and what we liked about wrestling. And I didn't want to try and squeeze anyone into a box. I think we're fortunate that when we started 2013, there was less of a pervasive online wrestling media presence nonstop. So I think we had a little bit of room to breathe and kind of develop our own style a little bit. I kind of feel like if you start to do a podcast now that's about anything, you're immediately compared to the 10 other things that are already covering it. And I feel that's like really difficult to find a unique hook or anything. We were just very fortunate that we kind of got in early and were able to cultivate enough of a kind of a space for ourselves that when I remember like losing sleep at night that there was another podcast that was going to cover the Attitude Era literally launched the same week as us, and I was like, this is awful. This is not this is awful. Like, and then there's literally another podcast called the Attitude Era Podcast. I'm like, yeah, whatever, fine, the internet's a big place. It's cool, whatever.
I just still can't wrap my head around the fact it was 2013. Like,
I know it's my 10th year, my decade of description. I'm starting.
Nuts.
I'm very, very happy with that fact.
So I fell onto Attitude Era. I think it was episode 3. I fell onto the show. I can't remember how I discovered it now, but yeah, I've been listening ever since then. And
what a ride it's been, huh?
It's incredible. I've been trying to say to Tom like how great that show is when I first discovered it, and it's just gone from strength to strength to strength. But that is because of Adam, yourself, and Billy. How did you meet Adam and the baddest man on the planet that is Billy Keable?
So Billy was the president of the Stand-Up Society when I first joined. Or was he the vice? No, he was the president. Sam Chaplin was the vice president. So I kind of, and they were, had just taken over it. It was their first kind of week. So they were, they kind of went out of their ways to introduce themselves to me, because it's like, oh, there's a new lad here and he's doing stand-up and I'm the president. And so, hello, Mr. President. And I just remember, just hanging out with Billy quite quickly. And like, him and Sam were like very like, I don't know. I put a great stock in having different types of friends. And I was like, my God, like, I hope everyone I meet in the UK is as different as these two lads. Because I felt, I spent a year in Glasgow and I was very kind of insulated because I knew I was there for just a year. I'm going to do my master's And I was kind of subconsciously like, don't make connections, whatever it is. And I arrived in Lincoln, I was like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Something with cats, apparently. I want to make some friends. And, you know, they were amazing people to meet because we had such different world views and experiences and whatnot. You know, they were English and I was Irish. And that in itself was kind of, I remember immediately us introducing each other to loads of different comedy and loads of different shows and different music, and it felt like very synergistic. And Adam was Billy's housemate, so I think the first time I met Adam would have been I was doing stand-up in what we thought was a bar, but really looked like someone had just kind of went to town on decorating their living room into a bar, because it was in the middle of an estate in Lincoln, doing a bit of stand-up there. And the lad who was doing, I didn't know I was getting all psyched up to go on stage, and the lad who was the MC was trying to push the drinks, and the night was it hadn't really kicked off yet, and he had a few already, and he was a little bit red in the face, and he's like, don't forget, lads, Jaeger bombs and Sambucas up at the bar, let's get fucking pissed tonight. And I turned to Adam Bibilo, I went, yeah, and I went up and I did 10 minutes of stand-up then, and I felt like I made that kind of first weird impression. I met him like a few nights later, and it was like, you know, oh my god, you like wrestling? Me too. You feel like JBL's theme is like going on a log flume ride? Yes. You know, so we connected very quickly, and you know, just spent a load of time hanging out with each other. We spent like literally, I think, 2 years watching wrestling and talking shit and being goofy and making each other laugh before we decided, let's try and do something together. And I think like that was the best thing for it, because I feel like we tried to rush ahead of ourselves and try and make content before we knew what made each other tick. And even when we started, we thought we knew what made each other tick. And it's like, I still don't fully understand Billy Keable as a human being at the best of times. Like, so what I've loved about it is having a 10-year library now of seeing my relationship with my friends and them change and mature and grow. We're very different, I think, now, the three of us, collectively and individually, to when we first started, but there's something there that's still kind of the same that you can't kind of get rid of. And I like that about it. I kind of feel like I get nostalgic listening to even recent episodes of the show, because it reminds me of when I first met the guys and all that. So yeah, anyone always asks me for advice about podcasting, and I can only say that the only advice that I could give that is genuinely like objectively good is do it with someone that you love spending time with, and you want to make laugh and want to be made laugh by them, or want to learn things from them, or you want to tell them things. That's always the most entertaining thing to record, and generally speaking, it is the most entertaining thing to listen to. I did say that to someone I was doing this weird Yu-Gi-Oh advertising video for 6 months ago, and he looked at me for ages because he was trying to start a podcast, and he went, yeah, so my podcast, me and my mates, we do a load of bong rips and we eat a load of like food and we just talk shit for like 5 hours. I'm like, well, that sounds really great, man. You know, I'm going to tune in. But make sure you do that with someone you love, okay?
It's incredible to me how popular the show's become, though. It blew up, let's be honest, you know, hugely successful Patreon, live shows, God knows what else. At one point, did you guys just notice this and look at each other and go, we've got something here, boys?
Yeah, it's all down to Joe Graham, my co-host from How to Wrestling and also wife, who was always very good at making me believe in myself and in ourselves, I guess. And, you know, I was teaching for a few years and doing the podcasts at the same time. I took like around a year break from the Out Here podcast at one point, but I was still doing Cinema Swirl and How to Wrestling while I was full-time teaching, which is, you know, I don't know how in the name of God I did that, because teaching is a very hard job and podcasting is hard in its own way. And teaching saps the very resource that you need to podcast efficiently. So those are a couple of like kind of harsh years, you know, a lot of sleep, a lot of work, you know, and feeling like I was maybe missing my opportunity a bit. And I kind of, you know, I moved to Manchester with this kind of dreamish job because I had 4 days a week where I'd be working. I thought, well, the 5th day a week, I could use that for podcasting. You know, I could do my other stuff on the side. And I was around 3 or 4 months into the job, and it just wasn't what I thought it was. And we had started back with the Out Here podcast, and it'd been maybe 6 months or so back, and we're kind of like, well, you know what? I think we can maybe try this Patreon thing. The how-to Patreon had been up for a while, so I had kind of a little bit of a cushion there. Ash from Under Consultation, which is another fabulous podcast out there, he visited us around that time, and he was like, well, what age are you? I'm like, oh, I'm like 20, I think I was like 27 or 28 at the time. And he's like, look, if you're going to give it a go now. You know, I'm just hearing someone else say that, and he was felt wise beyond his years when he said that to me. And I was like, well, you know what, maybe I'm going to give this a whirl. And it just, it wasn't overnight. There was a lot of people who were waiting for us to do a Patreon. And I think when we finally did, and it was kind of like, we're doing this with the view to, we wanted to be able to make this regularly. Because the last third of the first season, we were literally recording it on beds in hostels across all, like, there's one that's recorded in Bristol. There's one that's recorded in Joe's dead grandmother's house in Neston. Like, they were all over the place. So the idea was just like, look, we're not coming to this page and just being like, way, we've done it, now give us the fucking money. It was like, look, we have done it. We would like to do it more formally and properly. We're going to produce this other content. And, there's been growing pains along the way in making something like this that was my kind of, my dirty side hustle or whatever, my bit of fun on the side or whatever, and turning that into the job, because I was very well aware of issues of burnout and things like that you see in YouTubers, Twitch streamers, podcasters, etc. So I was trepidatious. I went in, it may seem like it was all guns blazing, but everything was very, very considered, And again, with Cinema Swirl, I didn't want to launch a Patreon for that so soon, and also we had a break with that as well. So we were all just kind of, I take my time with these things. I don't want to rush. That's usually kind of how I've approached it. So it may have seemed like it was kind of a runaway overnight success, but there's a lot of kind of small steps along the way, and a lot of, there was a big break. And I'm not going to lie, the fact that I never said that the podcast was over, but everyone just decided that it was when the first season was over. I mean, it's like, if you want to think that, okay. And I swear there are people still out there who think that the podcast ended in like 2015 or 14 or whatever it was. And they got a shitload of episodes.
They got a lot of catching up on. They got that Undertaker 5-part series to catch up on.
Yeah.
that just having a break to check out the Undertaker's t-shirts was possibly my favorite thing ever.
Yeah, that and the WWA got a lot of us through the pandemic, for better or for worse.
So what I think we need to do is take a moment just to ask what sort of wizardry or voodoo you are the master of, sir. Because you have done one thing that I think every wrestling fan only ever dreams of. You've managed to get a lady of your life to not only watch wrestling, passionately enjoy wrestling, and record a podcast all about it. Obviously, we'll talk about how to wrestle. How did you do this?
I mean, like, the same with Joe when I met my other friends. Like, she was someone where, we got on very well very quickly. We made each other laugh a lot. She knew so little about wrestling, and I think that, I think it felt kind of like it obvious that we were going to do a podcast of a sort, and she was kind of like, she was quick to point out that kind of the idea of Cinema Swirl of, introducing someone to something they hadn't seen before, that's just like a great format, like, And the amount of times where I've had people being like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I've like plagiarized your format by introducing my friend to something they don't know. I'm like, that's literally teaching people things. That's like, I'm not going around skills going, oi, that's my gimmick, like, absolutely fine, Although I will say, the person who pitched me once if they could do How 3 wrestling, I was like, nah, I'd rather you absolutely didn't. Or at least don't tell me in advance, so I can like not know that someone thought this thing. But Joe was really interested in the podcasting stuff early on because she worked in digital media marketing. She worked for publishers at the time, and she was actually actively involved at the time in producing digital content like podcasts and stuff for things like gardening and kitchen and railway magazines. So we ended up kind of talking about podcasting quite quickly, and she knows social media in a way that I could only ever really hope to. So I think that's kind of where the seeds of the podcast kind of were sown, really, is that we felt that there was a natural fit there, that we could do something. And I feel like it's a space that's not really been ventured a lot into. There are a lot of couples podcasts out there that make for some tough listening, is all I'll say. There's not everyone should be introduced to every topic is all I'll say on the matter. Let's just say. But Jo is like really had quite a ride with wrestling. And I think to say that she loved it immediately is absolutely not the case. It was a couple of years in, I think, before she really started to understand what it is she liked about it. And I felt that once I was able to take the foot off the brake of trying to be like, listen, I'd have people every week being like, she needs to know this. You need to tell her this. You need to make this joke so that she'll laugh, and then the neurons will form and she'll like Macho Man Randy Savage the way I want her to. And I was like, I don't want to be that guy, and just like, I don't know, I feel like the variety of topics we've handled, there's been some times where, hey, we've got some really heavy episodes of How to Wrestling are out there because we cover some really heavy topics. I think the thing that I always loved about Jo, and I still do, is that she's very compassionate in a way that I think as wrestling fans, we're trained to like, you're trained to tell yourself, oh, they're all right. Like, it's fine. They're professionals. You don't think about the physical, the emotional side of things that they have to endure. She's made me think about wrestling in much a different way. And I think, wrestling doesn't speak for itself sometimes. I think you can put on a bunch of matches and show it to someone. And I think it doesn't matter if it's wrestling or your favorite stand-up or music or a movie, anyone who's shown anything and the person sat across being like, like I remember, like my brother still to this day can't watch Spaced. Great classic British sitcom. And he can't because his overbearing roommate in his first year of university literally was like, the bit's coming up, gets in, it's a joke, laugh with me. And, you realize that you might have an issue with control at that point. And wrestling, even if you're the most chill, laid-back wrestling fan in the world, we're sensitive people, as evidenced by the existence of all wrestling fans on the internet forever. We are easily riled up, overly defensive. We're used to being looked down on. We're also used to, a lot of us, of keeping it secret. And now, everyone's talking to everyone on the internet. Invariably, these kind of explosions come up and all that. So I think I don't think I would have been able to podcast with Jo as well as I have had it not been for wrestling, but I don't think I could have introduced Jo to wrestling without the podcast. And because that was like the first podcast where it's like we treated it like a job, like we'd have hours set aside for it. We set the Patreon up for that one first because that was the first one that we were like, we treated it seriously. We wanted to have content out on a certain schedule or cover things to a certain standard and not just kind of do it whenever. And I think kind of as a result of that, we weren't going to be watching loads and loads of wrestling in our off time. It meant then that the wrestling came in waves when it was time for episodes to come. So it wasn't like, hey, it's a new episode of How to Wrestling and Jo's watched 10 pay-per-views since the last one and she has a great appreciation for Juventud Guerrera and you won't get to go on the journey with her. It's just a fact now because we had a load of fun without you. I'm not saying everyone has to start a podcast with their partner to get them into wrestling over the course of 7 or 8 years or whatever, but it's a really good way to get them into wrestling because we just did our Nitro Girls episode today, which is something I never in a million years thought I would have had the pleasure of covering, yet alone with someone who was also my wife. So to say that like she gets wrestling in a way that I don't, and I really love that. I feel like we're reaching the point in How To now where I'm going to start learning more stuff than she is, I think.
But as you said about Jo being compassionate on it, that is one thing I always take away when I'm listening is most wrestling fans are like, oh, that move was amazing. Do you see that? But Jo's like, she wants to know the people, their story, like their backstory and everything like that. It's the way she gets into it. It's quite amazing to hear.
Yeah, she's got a very interesting kind of process of like kind of taking on board a wrestler, and there's a lot of times we've done episodes where, I say, for instance, Taz is a great example. We did the episode on Taz. We watched all the matches. We watched all the promos, all the intense talk, all the towels. We watched every bit of it. And then, like, it just, like, she didn't seem to like him that much. And then it was like, once AEW came along and Taz is on commentary and he's a little bit kind of loose around the collar and he's just talking about how much he loves his son and how proud he is of him. Yeah. And she's the biggest Taz fan in the world now as a result of that. And it's just like, I think wrestling plays on human emotions, so I don't think it's that strange that someone kind of, they take a lot of stock and they get a lot of enjoyment out of these people as characters. Or we're doing Bobby Lashley next. I've been watching him for 12, 15 years, however long it's been. And I guarantee you I'm going to feel things about Bobby Lashley I never even thought possible the next time I record with her.
So his promo skills are not the best. His
Sweet Bobby.
Wrestling-wise, he's a huge tank, but every time he talks, I just like, maybe get someone to do it for like, get MVP back and let's just let him do it all for you.
Yeah, that was good.
That was great. But I noticed the how-to episodes, obviously, some are like 4 or 5 hours long. I'm going to be honest with you, Kevin, right? I was introduced to you through Jamie, so I've actually not... I've listened to Cinema Swirl, but I've not listened to how-to or actually there, and I mean, fuck me, there is a lot... I don't know if I'll go back to the beginning, if I'm honest.
What I say to do is find something that just tickles your fancy. Find someone that you know a bit about and you'd like to know more. We mentioned Sabu earlier. That's an episode where I'm a lifelong Sabu fan, and that episode was a trip, Some ones you can probably anticipate are going to be heavier than others, like the Jake the Snake Roberts episode. I'm not going to lie, it was a tough one to record. The Brody Lee episode, that was a real tough one. That's one that kind of that was hard to do, and the Own Heart episode as well. That was another. There's a lot of ones there where you you can anticipate in advance. And if that's not for you, you don't want to hear that. I totally, I understand that. And I would say there's a lot of other episodes that delve more into kind of the joyousness and the silliness and things of that nature. I think the episode about jobbers is a very wild ride indeed. I'd always recommend that to anyone who's not. You'll find out things about jobbers that you didn't think you'd want to know.
I find though with wrestling stuff, I like to pretend that I know fuck all because I love the whole, since being a kid and watching like the mystery of it, the kayfabe, shall we say. I still, even this day, even though you can literally find out anything now about everyone and anything, well, as obviously you do a podcast about it, like, I still like the idea of not really knowing what's going on. So when Eddie Guerrero passed away, I mean, that fucking ruined me. Absolutely. What an absolute hero that guy is. So much love for him and stuff. And obviously, sadly, Jay Briscoe obviously passed away this morning, which is devastating.
Hard news to wake up to. Very hard news to wake up to.
Massively, especially after that incredible match they had with FTR at Death Before Dishonor. So I've completely forgot my point now, I'm going to be honest. I was going somewhere with this, and now I'm like, shit, because I started talking about other people. I suppose, because your episodes are so long, are there any real standout ones that I should go and check out? Like, you go, this is one you need to go listen to, or this one, or this one?
Oh, man, I mean, definitely the episode about Sabu is a recent one that I'm really proud of. We did a two-parter on Shawn Michaels, one that covered up until his first kind of break from wrestling, and then his kind of redemption arc where he becomes the BoJack Horseman of the WWE, as someone told me on Twitter recently. As a two-part, I was really, really happy with that because I felt like no chat about Shawn Michaels can be done in earnest if you have to do that heavy gear change in the middle and be like, and now he's good, and I think it was some ground that feels like I tread a lot recently with season 4 of the Attitude Era, which was the Montreal Screwjob and things like that, but kind of not letting the likes of Shawn kind of go off scot-free, but also looking at the impact that an event like that had on him as well. I would also definitely recommend the episode about Vince McMahon. It's to this day one of the things I'm most proud of. It's probably our longest episode, but it's one that I feel is like a genuine examination of him as the facts stood, at the time, and looking at the ways in which he's used the wrestling industry to further himself personally, and in ways that kind of, I've not listened back to it since the most recent kind of set of news about Vince, but I kind of feel like a lot of what we talk about explains why he's acting the way he is. I think that's in terms of a study of someone who's pretty inscrutable. That's what I'm very proud of. And I will say as well, a lot of the episodes about the women of wrestling who I felt never really got proper coverage from a lot of kind of wrestling media. Sherry Martel, Luna Vachon, Awesome Kong, Manami Toyota. Those are all episodes I'm like super, super proud of because you don't hear a whole ton about what it was like to train and become a wrestler if you were a woman in the late 70s and early 80s. So I would say those would be some of the standout episodes, the ones I'm most proud of. But as I've approached my decade of description, I would be remiss not to point out that I have probably forgotten more that I've podcasted about than I can remember at this point.
Yeah. Probably. So with both AE podcast and How to Wrestling, you've done live shows at the London Podcast Festival. That must have been a nerve-wracking experience doing that for the first time, surely. Or was that stand-up just like, nah, I'm good?
I mean, there's always nerves with something like that, you know? And I think that if I was ever going up to do a show and I'm like, I'm good, I would probably like not do a very good show. I'm a firm believer that, you know, you're not nervous, you're excited, you know, when it comes to doing stuff like that, you know? And if you're going on super chill, I don't think it makes for, you want to have the little bit of energy come out in terms of those nerves. So I think every time there's been a little bit of a nerve-wracking element to it. I think the most recent one was particularly nerve-wracking just because it was the first one since the pandemic, and then the Queen died, and then there were the rail strikes, and all this was happening literally on the day of the podcast festival, and we had sold out, and we're like, oh my God, it's literally a week to go, and everyone's going to return their tickets. But we all got accommodated. The Queen didn't impose national mourning non-stop, and we were able to talk about wrestling at the podcast festival. So yeah, that's always a little bit nerve-wracking, but like more so than nerve-wracking, it's just such a joy to see all the fans and see them all, you know, interact with each other, and everyone get to kind of be there in the same place. It's always a hoot. Like it feels like kind of a weird like homecoming kind of mini fan meet and greet expo. And I have a big dirty burger afterwards as well, which is always great.
Oh, beauty.
It must be mad though, sitting on that stage with your two best friends talking about wrestling, when originally you did this in like a squat, you said earlier, and now you're doing it to a room full of people. Like, it's nuts.
Yeah, no, it's seriously weird, you know, and I realize that we are, you know, very much a niche within a niche, and I'm fine with that. I'm really happy with that fact. I don't think I'd want to be anything more than that. I feel so much for the wrestling media personalities who try and play to the audience at large. I'm like, you know, I don't know how you do it, folks. You know, my hat goes off to you. And I just it just feels right kind of being up on the stage with those guys, you know? It's funny because Adam never viewed himself as being like kind of a performer. When we did our radio show, he was like our producer, like Roz, who would kind of chime in and we'd talk to him and stuff like that. And like, man, just every year it feels like when we're there's a kind of an escalation or whatever it is. I think the most surreal moment ever is the if you want an episode to listen to, the How to Wrestling live show, the music special, where we have all the musical, we have the Life I Lead from Mary Poppins done in the style of Stone Cold Steve Austin, or Joseph and the Technicolor Dreamcoat, but it's the story of Bret Hart and the Montreal Screwjob. You know, I can't begin to tell you how proud I am to have stood up on stage and do that. That is like that's the best thing I think I've ever done in my life, if I'm not honest. Other than marrying my wife, that's the best thing I think I've ever done. That's the peak right there. So yeah, it don't get much more surreal than that. And I very much love doing the live show. I kind of always wanted to be something special. And I know I've done it mainly at, like, we did some in Manchester. We did this stuff in London the last few years. I've had offers to kind of, you know, take it on the road and go, you know, all these different places and I'm like, I don't know if I don't know if A, there's a demand for there to be that much of it, or B, if I'd want to do it and feel like I was giving out something of you know, that was worth everyone's time in that respect. So I like them being kind of special. I don't view myself as being in the live events business. I view them as being like a really nice kind of opportunity at the end of the year for everyone to meet each other. It's more about, I know it sounds so bloody cliche, for me, Adam, Billy, Joe, and the fans, you know, that's all it's about, you know. But it is, it's really nice. And like, I'm not ashamed to say there were more than a few tears at the most recent one of people who would, like, you know, they loved going to those live shows, and those are the types of folks, and they didn't get to go to the wrestling shows, didn't get to go to see any of the live events they would get to see. They didn't get to hang out with the people that they would normally hang out with at all those shows, and like realizing that it was a big missing part of a lot of people's kind of yearly routine. And it's like, yeah, you know. And I think thinking about that makes me nervous about doing any live show, because I want to live up to the hopes of those people who've who supported us and all that. You know, it's I take that seriously. So I'd rather do them kind of less frequently and more thought and time and care goes into them. You know.
Absolutely. Now, obviously, we had your wonderful co-host Sam Chaplin on the show. What a wonderful human being he is. So, we talked all about Cinema Swirl, but I did want to talk to you about the show just briefly because, as I said to Sam, it is a fantastic show. It's a great concept for a show. And you can't beat listening to you torture Sam with the Lord of the Rings, quite frankly. But are there any particular standout moments or episodes for yourself with Cinema Swirl?
Oh man, I mean, it's always a joy to record that show. It's an absolute joy. I love it. I'm doing Rocky 5 tomorrow, and I'm so bloody excited. I think all the Lord of the Rings episodes were just it was, and I kind of feel like when they happened, across the timeline of the show, it felt like time had moved on, but there was this thing that we had to keep coming back to, and it's something about it that like every time the movies get longer, if you don't like the first one, you ain't gonna like that second one, and if you don't like that second one, you ain't gonna like the extended third one that our patrons are so happy to vote him to watch. Like, so that's always special. I think I'm on quite a Lord of the Rings kick at the moment after Rings of Power. Adam's got me onto the BBC radio adaptation, which I'm going to start listening to. So as it stands right now, that's very much, that's on my mind. The Les Mis episode is I think it's my favorite podcast maybe I've ever recorded.
Wow.
And the best compliment I ever got about it was Billy came up to me after I'd done it. He's like, I listened to that Les Mis episode. I loved it. It's one of my favorites. I've never seen the movie, by the way. I just really liked you guys singing all the time. It's like, what? I'm like, all right, I'll take that, and I feel like I had arrived at the conclusion 10 minutes into that podcast that like, holy shit, I'm in my 30s and I like musicals now. Hey! I was loud and proud about that fact, and I had so much fun. I think, a lot of the stuff on Cinema Swirl that we've done on the Patreon as well has been a lot of fun. Like, kind of us sitting down and like rolling our eyes and being like, I always laugh about Sam doing the line when we did Troll 2 and The Room, and he said, now, for the first time ever on the internet, 2 white men will review The Room. And the fact that we still managed to find fun with this movie, that I was like, I reviewed that movie when I was on Flirt FM in 2007. Like, I was already sick of it and still finding fun with it. I feel like I could review The Phone Book with Sam and end up in stitches. I think the secret to my enjoyment of Cinema Swirl is that it's like I get an excuse to talk to him and make jokes. I think we've hit our stride, and I think we did 50 episodes in like the first 4 years of the podcast, and we did 50 episodes in the last 18 months to 2 years. And I think you could just tell the fact that we've hit our stride with it. We love doing it. It's like it's always on the same day every week when we do it. So it's like it's always something that I'm excited about. I love those Christmas episodes. I listen to those to get myself in the Christmas spirit, because just hearing Sam talk about his weird Nottingham Christmas gets me giddy as hell. Hearing him hate National Lampoons gets me giddy as hell. The Independence Day episode that was recorded in a heat wave, and both of us are literally naked in the second half of the episode. This is a lot of good times with that. I'm a big fan of that podcast. Good thing there's lots of movies, and good thing he's seen fuck all of them.
So, go on, Joe.
No.
Dumb and Dumber 2, Kevin.
Jesus. Oh, man. There's a trip.
I literally asked Sam the same question, and I think he wanted to curl up into a little ball and never speak to me ever again. So,
it's just one of those things where it's like, I don't want to say, it's like, it's like a train wreck and you can't look away, and then you look inside the train wreck and it turns out that the train has defrauded the people of Malaysia somehow. It's just. Nothing that bad has any right to be that interesting. How dare they make me that's been rent free in my head since we recorded it. It has no right. Like the other day I forgot, like I was like It was David Simon, the guy who made The Wire. It was his new show that he had done, the mini-series, We Own This City. And I was scrolling through Sky and I saw it and I go, I watched that last year and I forgot about it. But I still remember Dumb and Dumber 2. No! No! That's not on. That's not right.
I'm so pissed I've never watched it. I never intend to watch it. I'm a huge Jim Carrey fan as well, but I can't. I don't like the fact that directors and producers years on go, what needs a sequel 25 years on? Oh, The Goonies. Like, what are you doing? Leave it alone.
Waiting, like it's a cooldown on an RPG or something. They're just waiting so they can finally press the button and do it again. Do another one. Yeah, I do Dumber 3. I do it. Wait, another 20 years. Dumb and Dumber 3. Let's do it now.
Don't even put that idea out into the world, please.
Yeah, I mean, Malaysia couldn't take another one, to be honest. Like.
But I mean, I saw your most recent Cinema Swirl, obviously, is The Love Guru. And again, I've actually seen that. I don't remember any of it. I don't want to. It's so poor. They obviously went, Austin Powers is fucking fantastic. Let's get him into some sort of similar ilk and go from there.
I love watching someone who has undeniable comedy chops just slip, and just, and like, there's like 100 people in that room and no one has the heart to tell me it's not funny. Like, can you imagine the amount of fake laughs in the script reads for The Love Guru and all the people being like, no, it's just, I'm not laughing because it's the third take. It was funny the first time though. Oh my God, it's so funny. Oh my God.
Oh, Mike. Oh, sorry. I mean,
oh God, I'm the same. I've seen that film, don't remember it at all. It's so bad.
Yeah, it kind of exists in this like liminal space between spaces. It's a very strange one. That, yeah.
But I did want to talk about podcasting as a medium because I personally think it is one of the greatest mediums in the world because anyone can do it. But not only that, I think it.
But should they?
Maybe not should they, but they can. But I think it affects you on a personal level, like. You podcast with 3 of your best friends and your wife. Do you feel like doing this has brought you closer to these people, doing this together?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm not going to be the first person who says that it's difficult to kind of maintain relationships as you get older. And I think the pandemic really played havoc on that notion as well. And kind of, there's a lot of people who I think I've fallen out of touch with a little bit, the last few years, just because of the pandemic and things like that. And just, not being able to see people. Like, there's a lot of people who I consider to be really, really close, good friends. I realize, I've not seen them in nearly 2 years in some cases now. And it's just kind of, it makes me very appreciative. And I can't speak for hypotheticals, but it makes me appreciative that I had, reasons to keep in touch with everyone. And I think, like, if it did me good, I know it did other people good as well. And we all treat it as a job, and it is, it is work, and it's fun working out, but it is still work. But I think that was the period of time where we were at least kind of like, let's allow ourselves to enjoy the nature of this, because I think we all kind of could do with it and whatnot at the moment. So I'm very, very grateful. It has brought us closer together. And like, I love the big weekends when, Billy comes down, and I love to cook, boys. I don't know if I've mentioned it 10,000 times enough on Cinema Swirl, but I love to cook. And when I've got a table full of people, it's the Irish mammy coming out at me. If I've got a table full of people and they're eating something that I've made, I'll tell you, it ain't stand up, but there's a unique adrenaline that goes with that, and I love that. I love hosting people. I love caring for them with a big bowl of food. I love asking people their favorite food and then making it for them. And I love that, Billy's going to come down the Rumble weekend. We're going to record an episode, but he's staying all weekend, and we're going to watch the Rumble and have a good time and eat some good food and all that. And I love that, it's kind of, the excuses that we're doing work, but like, I'm really excited for that weekend. And I always get excited and giddy when it comes up to those periods. It was really tough going back to that after the pandemic, though. Like, that was quite strong. Like, I was really kind of shook up after the first times where I got to see people back and have everyone around and everyone's there for a bit. I can't really explain what it was. I'm not sure if other people experienced this, but it was kind of almost like not being used to having people in person for so long and then having like everyone around for a big thing. It was just like, whoa, like, it was kind of intense there. And I was really worried for a bit at the start, after the pandemic. They're like, oh my God, am I like kind of got a bit of an asterisk beside me now. Can I not handle these types of events anymore? But I think it was just like one of those passing things. There was a lot of, I think, intense emotions and extremes for a lot of folks over the pandemic. I knew a lot of people who like split up in relationships and things like that, and like a lot of people who lost family members and things like that. And I lost my grandmother, who was 99. Could you fucking believe she survived so many waves in a small nursing home in Ireland with only 20 people in it? They all got COVID and she didn't. But she passed away, just at the kind of the end of the pandemic period. And I kind of felt like, it was just strange, kind of everything's changed so much, but we're kind of going back to the way things were. So it took a bit of time to get around. But I think I was really fortunate to have those friends in my life, and we're kind of, it's like back to normal now. Like we're back in our routine of people coming over and getting to see everyone again. And I missed that. I know a lot of people missed us having the 3-person recordings for the ATR podcast during the pandemic. But all I'll say is, aren't we all glad we didn't do Survivor Series 97 over fucking Zoom? It would have been an awful... We are 3 men who can't work on a delay. Like, it does not work that way. No amount of editing could polish that turd. So...
I suppose with the pandemic, though, it became the norm, didn't it? Because it was so long, everyone just got used to it. I suppose you got used to not seeing people. So when you did get to see people again, it's a bit like, well, hang on, this is a bit, why are you here? Like, stay over there. I don't know. I don't think I want you in here, actually.
In Goodnight, Mr. Tom, where he eats the sausage and eggs and bacon when he first arrives, and he gets sick because he's not used to it. He's too rich.
Yeah,
I think that's what my situation was. Whatever the opposite of Garbon Bunzia from Twin Peaks is, the niceness. It was too much for me. I had to meter it out a little bit.
I did not expect a Goodnight, Mr. Tom reference in this conversation.
We talk about the classics on this podcast. Thank you very much.
What a film that is. But I find with wrestling, it's more of an escapism sort of thing. Like, even now, like watching it now, I love the fact that I can just get lost. Like, forget about all the shit that's going on at the moment, like in the world and with everything, the pandemic,
focus on the shit in wrestling instead.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I'm so excited for Omos to fucking win the Rumble. Like,
who's going to be able to throw him over the top rope? He's here.
Oh my!
We all know what's going to happen. It's going to be a group of about 10 people doing it. It's the same every fucking year.
They wouldn't dare.
They'll all circle. They'll all circle. You'll have a bit of a moment where he's just pushing everybody off, like, and then he'll do that thing they all do. This is a big show where they climb on and he goes. Roar.
It's really nice and generous of the 3 of us to think he's actually going to be booked in the Royal Rumble this year. I think like we are getting away with ourselves a little bit here. I think we put the cart in front of the horse a little bit.
It was on Raw. He's in.
Is he confirmed? Has he declared his intention for the Royal Rumble? That's what I want.
I think MVP declared it when he fought Elias on Raw.
Okay, I'm good. All right, I got to make some calls to my man of numbers. I have to change some bets real quick.
Omos couldn't do it because he's like, okay. I just can't stand the word the man says.
I just don't want it to be code. I don't want it to be obvious. Do you know what I mean? You can always tell, I think, year on year who's going to win.
Mm.
So I just don't want to be the obvious choice. So I just don't want to be Cody as much as I would love it to be Cody. I don't want to be because it's, you know what I mean? It's the whole kayfabe thing again.
I'd love it to be Cody, but I just as much love, Cody to fall short and, have tears in his eyes and be like, I failed my father's dream and go on another odyssey. I one of my favorite storylines ever is, Shawn Michaels becoming obsessed with trying to face The Undertaker at WrestleMania. And when he fails in the Rumble and everyone thought, oh, he'll obviously win and take him on, and he didn't. And he was like, oh, like, that always gets me going as a wrestling fan when someone comes this close. That's a fun story that you can tell. And no one can cry like the American Nightmare, let me tell you. I'll lick up them tears any day of the week. Thank you very much.
Oh, God. I forgot what I was going to fucking ask now. It threw me off, man. But before we start wrapping up, one of the reasons I'm going to say I admire you and your work so much is because you've managed to achieve that dream of being a full-time podcaster. This is your job now. How did you manage to achieve that? And is this something you ever thought would be possible when you first started?
No, I think like if it's, I was always very, very hesitant about any sort of kind of monetization or any sort of kind of let's make this official or whatever it is. And I think a large part of that was just me being kind of a bit young and scared and just not wanting to make kind of any big promises that I couldn't live up to or anything like that. As I say, really, it was something that was always on the back burner, and we were kind of paying attention to it and kind of slowly growing it over the years. Kind of got the feet wet with how to doing the Patreon there is kind of like getting to grips with it. And it's really down to, there's probably an alternate timeline where I went and I got a job where I did in Manchester, and it was every bit of the dream job I thought it would be, and I was happy doing that, and that was it, and I moved on in that career. But I think Jo was great at letting me know that in good conscience, it was like, the stars have aligned a little bit here. You've come back, you're recording again. It's better than it's ever been in terms of like your guys' chemistry and being able to make content. You've got loads of ideas for stuff for down the line. She gave me the nudge that I need. So I really owe that kind of aspect of it, to her. And I think I kind of repaid the favor a little bit when, a few years later, and we're at the point where it's like, look, she wasn't really happy where she was at that point in time in her job, and she was looking for a bit more flexibility with how she approached the world of work. And we're like, well, why don't you make it your full-time job as well? And I think I wouldn't have been able to do it without her. This is definitely not a solo operation, and she has been instrumental in helping it be as kind of authentic a thing that it is now. I think that was, everyone needs a little bit of a push, and I think I was definitely someone who needed a push, because I'd been kind of, I'd done the academia thing, got a little bit kind of reserved from doing that. I thought, oh, that's not for me, and I was quickly approaching that with teaching, where I thought like kind of, oh no, this isn't going to work out for me. I wasn't really in a big take another chance mode, because I felt like, I'd taken a few chances and it hadn't worked out for me. So I think it's just having the faith of her, and as well, like the support of the fans was absolutely incredible from the get-go. People spread the word. We've had a large portion of our backers on Patreon have been like day one backers, and they've come and gone and went away for a few months and then come back for a few months. But I feel like we have that core group of people who really were kind of going out of their way to support us. And even when the kind of explode, we came back then after being a year or so off, just kind of seeing the explosion of content of being like, whoa, there's so much now. Like there's so many podcasts, and there's so many recap videos, and so many YouTubers, and so many streamers, and just so many people who are, it's just like, hey, they're a Twitter user. That's their thing. They tweet, and they hold a lot of stock, and that was something that wasn't around when we first started. So kind of like, I think one of the reasons why I was able to work out is not trying to overextend what we are. There was a point in time where I had to make a conscious decision being like, I can try and operate 3 accounts that try to have a hot take on everything in the world of wrestling and try and stay in that loop, or I can focus on making some podcasts. And I've chosen always to focus on making the podcasts and not to try and chase the dragon that is, social media, because hey, we've gotten videos that have gotten literally 1 million+ views. We've had, these big viral moments on Twitter, and like, it doesn't really transfer into podcast listeners and Patreon backers. That only came because we were doing it for so many years, and it's a slow process, and one that's, will be difficult to start from scratch in 2022. I don't mind saying that a large part of why I'm here and I can do what it is it's luck and it's timing, and but I think lots of people who find themselves in jobs that they like, a lot of it does come down to luck and timing sometimes. I was just lucky that I had an audience, and I had a partner, and I had colleagues who were able to help me realize that. I probably would have been the last person to recognize it. I don't even dare think about going back and telling 10-year-old Kevin that he's just had to watch the Nitro Girls bikini pay-per-view special with his wife for his job. I think there's some sort of like time traveling prank going on here. It's like, oh, I see. I'm definitely not watching WCW now.
You've definitely got the personality for it as well, though, and I think the accent and the voice is you've got the full works, as it were. I think as well that goes with it. I could listen to you for hours.
Well, I'm glad of that, because I used to have a really bad list when I was a child. I had really, really bad speech and language difficulties growing up. I had to go see like a a specialist and all that because I just couldn't form my words properly.
No
So like
way.
I was, I was one of those kids who was kind of destined to not speak properly or speak very little. And I love and appreciation always to my parents who saw me maybe struggling when I was like 7 or 8 and, needing an outlet for something and really not wanting me to be on their hi-fi all the time. Of sending me to like speech and drama classes. And, I have learned to embrace my accent. I used to be so self-conscious about how I sounded. So self-conscious. And
Why?
it turns out it was for Nout because everyone loves dulcet Irish tones on
Yeah.
BBC Radio 4.
That's a soundbite, thank you.
I'm not going to pay my license fee this year. I'm going to do that instead. Clip that. Send it down to HQ in Media City. I'm square for the year. I'm up to date now, okay?
We're privileged to have it on here.
Mr. Stevens, do you have any more questions for our wonderful guest?
I suppose I do, but I think you kind of asked it in a sort of way. But Kefin, when you were pretending to do shows with your frog at 6 years old and then wanting to become a zoologist and then not sure that you wanted to become a zoologist and then pursuing stand-up comedy, etc., did you ever think that when you were growing up that this is where you would be today?
No, because like you imagine going back in time and like you're going to do a podcast. You're like, what are you fucking talking? What's that like? It's weird because like I always knew that what podcasts were, and when they came around or whatever it was, and I always felt like when they first kind of hit the scene in like really early podcasts like 2004 and stuff like that, there's this great mystery. It was like a mini disc player. Like, what actually is it? And like I think the thing that I'd be most happy to hear is that there is just kind of like there's a medium where you can find people talking passionately about the things that you like. And I will always tell anyone who like listens to our show and they're like, oh, I don't like that you said this about this thing, or you have this opinion, or you talk in this way. And I've had a lot of people like kind of agonizing with listening to this fucking long ass podcast. And I'll be like, I'll reply to me like, hey, you know what? We're living in this amazing day and age where like whatever it is you like, you can find someone talking about it or doing a video about it in any flavor that is your fancy. You want it extra spicy? Do you want to listen to a racist? You can do all of those things. It's all out there if you really, really want to find it. So I think like, telling myself just to kind of, I don't know, just do what you're going to do, because I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing had I not done the really weird mix of things that I've done. And I embrace the strange opportunities that life gives us. I will always jump at an opportunity to do a weird side hustle or be an extra or I'm in so many random corporate videos and so many random ads for the most niche random ass things in the world. Like, if you're into textile printing, that's right, textile printing, those special big printers that print textiles. This guy's in the video where they look at the samples. It's been up for 6 years and it has 100 views. And I love the Charles Bukowski book Factotum, where it means man of many jobs. And this lad, who is admittedly a drunken and degenerate in Henry Kanowski, just falls ass backwards from job to job. And I kind of like to think I'd make a sober version of that. Just, follow your instinct. Do what you can, follow your opportunities. That's the only thing I'd say to young me, because I wouldn't want to fuck up the good gig I got going at the moment. You dig? I've watched too many Back to the Future movies professionally to fall at the first hurdle of time travel.
I mean, it's your job to basically tell everyone how much you love Kevin Kelly. So you're winning at life, my friend.
It's a tough job, but someone's got to do it.
Kevin, before we let you get out of here, do you have any plugs, social medias, things you want people to go check out?
Well, the podcast we've been talking about, How to Wrestling, Added to Your Podcast, Cinema Swirl, they're available wherever you get your audio, Apple, Spotify, Google, etc. They're all hosted mainly on SoundCloud, so if you want them first and foremost there, head over to SoundCloud. You can get the links, RSS feeds, plug them into whatever podcast app you like. If you want to support the shows, you can do so on our various Patreon pages. They all have content that comes out every month associated with them. You all start at the $5 level, so it's the same across the board. You can jump in whenever you like. Unlike most of my colleagues and cohorts in the world of wrestling podcasting, we're not sponsored by, multimedia companies or ad agencies. So we don't have ad spots. We are, and I think one of the reasons why we are where we are is because we're 100% fan and listener supported. So if you do enjoy the show or you like what we're all about, you can support it directly over there, and we don't have to talk about steaks that come in the mail as a result. But you can follow me on Twitter at Kefin Mahon, and all the podcasts have got all the social media stuff up there as well. And keep your eyes peeled because we're on season 5 of the Attitude Era podcast, and we're recording a couple of episodes very, very shortly.
Ooh. It's almost like you've done that before, Kevin.
I know. Wrap it up, put a little bow on it there.
That was beautiful.
I could do those plugs in my sleep, I wish I could chop an onion as effortlessly as I could plug my own shit.
I wonder if you do it in your sleep. Do you ever decide to record yourself? You can find us a pension.
I mean, that could be a very interesting episode of Kevin Underground. I might work on that as a new format, the sleep podcast.
That'd be incredible. That or be a lot of silence and snoring. I don't know if you snore. I'm not sure. I was trying to make that funny in my head, and I was just going. All I got was nothing. It's like you're on your own there, so that's what you get. It's been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much for joining us at short notice and for just.
This was so much fun. I'm glad. Yeah, actually, it worked out much better this way for me in the end. So yeah, this is all.
Oh, perfect! Excellent, wonderful, perfect. And it literally going to smash out on Friday. So
great. Well,
beautiful.
If you ever want Billy or Adam or Joe or anyone, I'm assuming you don't want to be back-to-back Pod Crabs gang, but if you ever want any of those guys on, I'm sure they'd love to be on. They'll get a kick out of doing this, I think, to be honest.
Wonderful.
Absolutely. That'd be amazing.
Yeah, we'll work our way through. Absolutely. That'd be great.
Well, best of luck with it, guys. It's a fab show, and I'm really excited to see where you go with this. Keep up the great work.
It.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for coming on. And same to you, of course. Thank you, sir.
Guys,
look after yourself.
I'll leave you and love you. All the best.
Take care. See you later, man.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Mate, I'm so glad we got to do that interview. I followed this guy for 9 years. He's a massive inspiration to me. I have 2 people in this world I admire when it comes to podcasting. One's a Kevin, one's a Kefin. So, yeah, that meant the world to me.
Absolutely. Kevin, thank you so much again for taking the time out to chat to us. We really do massively appreciate it. We had so much fun. It was great. It was wonderful. And we hope that you all enjoyed listening to it as much as we did recording it, especially Jamie.